Thank you, President. So I see this, what we have today, I could break it into three. I mean, the problem we have in politics in this country, you could break it into three parts. So number one, we have a competence problem. The competence of these supposedly very experienced honourable members, such as the Honourable Steve Martin and the Honourable Sue Ellery, they pre-prepare their speech. So no matter what I say here in my speech, where I tried to move this motion, the honourable members just give me something that's pre-prepared. So it's not even responding to, in a meaningful way, the points that are that are raised. So I would say that's a competence problem we have with some of our representation in this country and in this state. The other part of the problem is a two-party problem that is just perpetuated in this country at the moment and in this state. The major parties are not listening to the people in any way and are deliberately not doing so. They're addicted, as I said before, Pauline Hanson's Please Explain cartoons. The major party, the most recent episode, the major parties have an addiction to immigration because it props up the economy and wallpapers over all of their previous mismanagement, of which we have already been at lengths to discuss. And I don't have to talk about it now because each party finger points at the other in relation to the mismanagement. So it's on the record of both major parties that have brought us to this situation. So what they do is they continue to prop up the economy and wallpaper over their previous mistakes with this obsession with migration. It's not going to help you because One Nation is actually listening to the people. And that's why this issue is actually of a major part of the One Nation platform nationally. I did say pause immigration, and we can pause immigration. That was my terminology, because we let in Anthony Albanese, Honourable Prime Minister, but allowed 765,000 record immigration in the last year, 2024. So the housing problem's being exacerbated at exactly the wrong time. So I didn't say, and even the Honourable Wilson Tucker has misquoted me to say that necessarily immigration is a bad thing. I'm talking about a solution, a partial solution for the problem we experience at the moment. And that point was deliberately ignored. So we could pause immigration. Right now we could for the rest of this year. We're almost at the beginning of the year. Let's say we pause it for 6 months. In the last 6 months, we still would have let through, based on, I think the February figure was 100,000 in a month, or was it January? We still would have let through more people than we would in these 6 months so far, in the years up to, say, 2011. It used to be at around 2011 from up to the Sydney Olympics 2000, we were talking about 100,000 a year. Now we're at 765,000 a year. So just to oversimplify and dismiss my argument to say that I'm anti-immigration in general, it's ridiculous. I'm talking about specifically the circumstances that we're facing at the time. And it's easy for the major parties to dismiss my argument because they simply don't listen and they don't realise how many people out there are asking for their representatives, and this even happened before I entered into Parliament, young people coming up to me saying, why are we letting so many people into the country when I can't get a house? So it's part of the existing problem, and only in a crisis would you talk about pausing, as I just did. But One Nation policy is to substantially reduce immigration to a sustainable level. There's going to be some targeted skilled migration in the future, but we need to get it down to a sustainable level. So let's not just dismiss, please, that I said immigration in general is a bad thing. My kids are both have Irish passports. Well, they're born here, but obviously we all benefit in the past from people that have come to this country as migrants, and to oversimplify like that is ridiculous. We're talking about addressing and reducing immigration to deal with this current crisis. So the major parties, by putting their heads in the sand, not listening to the people, are, and this is online, you don't have to live your whole life online, but if you live your life, part of your life online, you will see the disillusionment with the two major parties putting their heads in the sand, and the common narrative that comes up online is that the two-party system has destroyed this country. You are continuing to destroy the Australian dream of owning your own home, of a certain lifestyle that we used to enjoy in previous generations, and you are destroying Australia with things like excess immigration. What you are doing is effectively propping up and making up for your previous mistakes, and you're addicted to the immigration, and you're not listening to the people who are presently here who need to get a house. This is an emergency. It's a belligerence and an ignorance of a failure of representative democracy that the two major parties continue to ignore what the existing Australians want. And that is the power of the One Nation movement. You can criticise me as much as you want, but I stand here saying that the people that I represent want a change in this area. The major parties, continue to avoid these sort of changes because with immigration, it also helps their property developer mates, their donors, and it would be unpopular with the big end of town who actually give all their donations to the two major parties. So there's actually self-interest in the way that the major parties are failing to address these issues. We also have a political correctness problem, which is the last problem I'm referring to today. That's part of what the two major parties are addicted to. It's political correctness. They're too scared to take a stance that would actually help the people, because there's some risk in our society now that by saying something, as I've experienced, by being called a racist by the Honourable P.E. Yang several times, last week or the week before, so this is a problem. People, it's a cancel culture. You mention something like immigration without mentioning any race of people in the world, just the volume of immigration, and you get called a racist. So now we have this political correctness problem where, and it helps us, it helps One Nation, because we don't mind saying the truth. We can put up with being bullied and abused for speaking truth. It doesn't affect us. That's why the One Nation movement is actually gathering so much momentum, and so many people are coming across to One Nation in the recent polls. If the Honourable Steve Martin were to have the courage to go from his article, where he mentioned immigration, but which he's now backtracking from, it was suddenly a factor in our housing crisis on the 7th of May when he wrote the article. Now he's backtracking from it because it's actually political correctness. The Liberal supporter base would love him to come out and say that, yes, it's part of the problem, but he's too scared. The major parties like to play a small target strategy where they don't actually speak for the people, and they try to play this political correctness game because they're too scared to have the courage to stand up here like I have here and in the last couple of weeks and speak for something that will help the people get into houses immediately in a crisis. Don't worry about what this perceived political correctness thing is, Honourable Steve Martin. Just say what the factors are, say which levers you're going to pull if you were to get into government, and have some courage. That is what the people want from the two-party system, which is failing us, is a complete lack of courage, and you're failing to listen. Just because someone in your party office headquarters has said, well, if we say something about immigration, the Honourable Steve Martin, if he says something about immigration in this House, in the way that I have, that it's contributing to the problem, then somehow he might lose some votes somewhere, or he might lose some donors or something like that. This is pathetic. Be honest, have courage, get up, listen to the people. This is something that comes up all the time. Why do we have record immigration at the time when we also have record homelessness and record shortage of housing? Why? And none of you are prepared to address it in meaningful terms that I put it forward today.